Hello. Since early childhood, I have been interested in the mind, in consciousness, in understanding reality, and through that help others. I was wondering if anybody of you has not asked these questions to themselves. What is consciousness? What is reality? Well, for me, this has been my lifelong passion. And I've been inspired by that, and I have been having that motivation to find out more. In order to understand these fascinating topics, I thought I had to decide between either studying physics or medicine, or maybe philosophy, but that was not a hard science, or psychology. So I decided to study pharmacology because I knew that there was a whole range of fascinating substances that had an effect on the mind. I thought that by studying these substances, I will have a better understanding of what is the mind and how it works. Little did I know. After finishing my studies, I worked many years with people who had addictions, depressions, anxieties, fears, and other mental illnesses. We were very skilled at defining mental disorders and dysfunctions. But what is a healthy mind? A mind that flourishes, that is actually happy? We had no clue. We were giving these strong substances, but they rarely helped with the mental causes that triggered these dysfunctions in the first place. Addictions, for example, do not begin with a physiological dependency. They are actually triggered by other mental causes that lead to that, such as craving and desire for pleasures and happiness. Following my work with people who had these challenges with mental disorders, I then signed up with an organization called Pharmaciens Sans Frontières, which is an organization like Médecins Sans Frontières, but for pharmacists. And I worked in Asia with people who had leprosy, tuberculosis, and parasites, serious cases of parasites. And it really struck me, and I was really surprised to see these people that had actually physical disintegration, that they were in many ways more happy than the people I was working back in Switzerland, where it's clean. These people in Switzerland had physical well-being, but were actually disintegrating mentally. This really confused me. And I was looking, and I was trying to find a scientific explanation of what that cause was, why that happened. With the tools that I had learned, I was not able to describe these actual experiences of these people who were disintegrating mentally or were different because they were disintegrating physically. So even less could I understand them. I was really confused and was looking for a scientific explanation. It is during that research that I encountered the Buddhist teachings and its systematic methodology of analyzing reality through actual experience. While in modern science, we look at reality as if it were out there, as if there is something out there independent of our way of perceiving it. Some schools in the Buddhist, in Buddhism, they take mind as the center of experienced reality. In many ways, when I discovered that, this was the missing link between these two worlds. A science of the mind par excellence. I was hooked, and accordingly I spent the next 11 years in Dharamsala in India among the Tibetan community in exile. I first learned Tibetan, and then in Tibetan I studied philosophy, Buddhist dialectics, practice, and also debate. It is there that I met His Holiness the Dalai Lama and met a group of scientists who were coming up to Dharamsala every 2 to 3 years to hold dialogues with him around science. These were the Mind and Life dialogues. I had the privilege to join this group, and after a few years I had the honor also to moderate some of the proceedings. These meetings have been going on since 1987, and at the beginning were behind closed doors. They were a private exploration of topics such as sleeping, dreaming, and dying, or destructive emotions, or quantum physics, as well as craving, desire, and addiction. Over the years, these gatherings have also taken place in public. And many of these dialogues and these proceedings have been actually published as books and have been translated into many languages. On the YouTube, you can also even find some of the dialogues directly as they were filmed during the proceedings. All of these meetings were arranged by the Mind and Life Institute and hosted by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who is also the Mind and Life Honorary Chairman and the co-founder of this institute. Mind and Life Institute seeks to bridge and integrate contemplative wisdom and practices with modern research capabilities, and then use the resulting knowledge to catalyze and initiate programs to alleviate suffering and promote human flourishing. And here it's important to differentiate that we're not talking about pain, we're talking about mental suffering. During a meeting in the year 2000, His Holiness the Dalai Lama challenged the scientists present and said, "All these dialogues are very interesting, but what can we do for society? Can you, with your tools, prove that what we think is beneficial to really be of benefit? And if it's beneficial, then we should make it available to everybody." This unleashed a whole new range of basic research, what we nowadays call contemplative science. One question that I was having is, how can such dialogue unfold when you have worldviews that are so different? It was helpful for me to hear His Holiness the Dalai Lama defining three parts of Buddhism: Buddhist science, Buddhist philosophy, and Buddhist religion. These dialogues focus on the first two, Buddhist science and Buddhist philosophy, which His Holiness encourages us to take out religion because, after all, this is one's individual choice. So when we talk about science, it might be important and helpful to understand that the English word science comes from the Latin word scientia, meaning knowledge. So science is defined as a systematic enterprise that builds and organizes knowledge in the form of testable explanations and predictions about the world. It is important here to note that it doesn't say how this knowledge is acquired, only that it needs to be testable, it needs to make explanations, and that it needs to make predictions about the world. So accordingly, one method to gain knowledge is by looking inside and explore the inner world. This is something that contemplative practitioners, psychologists, and psychoanalysts have been doing. This is what we call the first-person exploration of the inner world. On the other side, by looking outside and explore the outer world, you can also gain knowledge. This is what science has been doing since, let's say, Galileo Galilei. It's an observation of the external world and is therefore called the third-person perspective of the world. It is my conviction that these two ways of acquiring knowledge do not need to be mutually exclusive. There are many aspects that speak to that combination, such as the exploration of actual experience, such as what are you experiencing right now? This is something only you can actually access. I can't, nobody else can. And also the effects of mental training. To me, this combination can be seen in this iconic image of the yogi in the lab. A yogi is a long-term practitioner that has dedicated his life to really understand the inside of his mental world. There are several ways how this image can be interpreted. And this image has also been featured on National Geographic and on Time magazine, by the way. On the one side, there is the science of meditation, where meditation becomes the object of investigation. We call this the science of meditation. On the other side, meditation itself can be a method to explore and gain knowledge. So meditation as science. Through this, one gains insight into the mental process and to actual experience. Research on consciousness, therefore, requires an integrated research method, a method that includes multiple disciplines and scientists from neuroscience, from clinical science, from philosophy, and most important, from contemplative traditions. So over the last 20 years, a lot has changed in regard to the scientific study of consciousness. New tools, new methods, and new insights were combined and have led to much groundbreaking understanding. First steps were taken in that direction in 1992, when a group of scientists came to Dharamsala in India and visited several hermits high up in the Himalayas. But the research methods, as you can see here, were very limited and basic. Adding to the limited tools was the challenge of a clash of cultures. I remember when this group of scientists came to my school, the Buddhist Dialectics school, and were showing how research is being done. They put a cap with many electrodes on one of those scientists, in this case Francisco Varela. And when my schoolmates saw him sitting there with his blue cap, they all burst out laughing and asked, "Why would you research the mind up here when everybody understands that the mind is here?" In the meantime, the tools have become much more sophisticated and powerful. It is only with the ascent of MRI technology that is magnetic resonance imagery that looks at the body without actually destroying it. And you can now look at the brain and different parts of the body like the heart or anything without actually destroying or disturbing it too much. So over the last 2 decades, 2 fundamentally new insights have emerged. The first is brain network functions. While it was thought that certain areas of the brain are specific to a particular function, it is now understood that brain functions are networked all over the brain. So you don't have just one function in one part of the brain, but they're highly correlated. So we speak about distributed brain functions. The second insight was that brains are not solid after reaching adulthood, because the brain continues to produce new cells until we die. And this is called brain plasticity. This has huge implications for what is possible, for how learning occurs, and how the effects of training and meditation affect the brain structure and our behavior. So when we talk about meditation, meditation is the intentional practice to familiarize oneself with mental processes and then cultivate positive qualities of the mind, such as attention, compassion, loving kindness, clarity, this is critical, as well as wisdom. So with this combined new understanding that brain functions are networked throughout the brain and that the brain has plasticity, new tools together were then, with these tools at hand, then long-term practitioners were invited into the lab and were serving as guinea pigs. You saw before one guinea pig, you see here another guinea pig. While these were like the Olympic athletes that had many years and many 10,000s of hours of practice, now more and more longitudinal research is being done that accompanies people before they learn these practices and then after the practices. And several changes can be observed. I have chosen 2 concrete and seminal findings among the several, now hundreds of publications that are emerging and are being published in 1 year. The first one showed that compared to untrained individuals, long-term practitioners are much more capable of making self-reports that actually correspond to brain waves and brain activity. The second insights is around brain plasticity. As I mentioned, this is the proof that mental training actually causes changes in your brain structure. While it was thought that, and this is an ongoing debate, between is consciousness an emerging property of the brain, or is consciousness something else than just the brain? And in many ways, this is the proof that the mind can actually affect the brain. So when we talk about the benefits of meditation, there are many, but science now has sort of come to terms with several benefits of meditation. It reduces anxiety. It has reduction also on anxiety, depression, and stress. It can reduce blood pressure, pain response, as well as stress hormone levels. It improves social skills and has effects on eating disorders and attention. And it can increase immune response as well as cellular health. As with much of scientific research, science is by nature very reductionist. And there is a danger that we are only actually looking through the scientific methodology at one small part of what is actually a human experience. So there are many caveats, such as what are the role of ethics, what is the role of the measurements for intentions, what is the role of the teacher, and what kind of techniques. But in principle, one can say that this positive disruption that I've been asked to talk to has led to much new insights. This ongoing conversation between scientists and the Buddhists continue to shape and change the way how one understands the brain and the mind. And this is why I am involved with Mind and Life, because I believe that this interdisciplinary work with scientists, with humanists, social scientists, and contemplative experts is the only way to understand how the mind works, and through that, of learning how suffering arises, and of how to overcome suffering and to promote human flourishing. So working with this group is a dream come true for me, because I work with people whose motivation is to be of benefit to people as well as to society. And through my work and my involvement, I have seen minds that are clear, stable, and shining. And I have experienced hearts that wrap you in pure compassion and loving kindness. And I have come to know that to develop these positive qualities of the mind, such as attention, of loving kindness, of joy, of happiness, is something that each and every one of us here can actually learn. It's not only for the experts, we can. Now you may ask, how does this benefit people and society? This is exactly Mind and Life's mission. So when we talk about these positive qualities of the mind, they are trainable. You just have to do it. Let me close with a quote of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Not so long ago, many people viewed science objective knowledge and the subjective understanding of the Buddhist inner science as mutually exclusive. But a combination of these two can provide the complete conditions for obtaining real human happiness. Thank you.